Sir, actually, I made this as short as possible, but still it's a bit long. The reason I'll just briefly give you the background of what this stress management is. There are many ways of looking at this stress management part of this COVID. One of them is from the psychological point of view. In fact, the psychiatric and there's the psychological. Now I'm looking at it more from the psychological. Psychiatry I have avoided because it becomes a little more of medical area. And one of the biggest problems we are facing with this stress is in terms of industry having a lot of difficulties. There are different age groups, different right from colleges, schools, up to even large companies. Everybody's got their own set of problems. Some of them are funny problems. Some of them are like real problems. Some are imaginary. I mean, the person imagines he has a problem. Counseling, unfortunately, in India, we are slowly recognizing the need for counseling. Many colleges are not equipped. The psychology courses do not deal with any serious psychology. There is some BSc psychology, there are some BA psychology. But slowly they are bringing in the Western concept because in India, stress was never a problem. I mean, got angry, then, I mean, it was done, it's gone. So, but now stress seems to be a major problem with people. It's maybe the affluence of the country or the way we have grown, too many luxuries. I mean, there's so many other reasons. Stress is becoming a major crisis. So I'm taking both stress and depression because some of the cases, not all, we are also finding stress is leading to depression, which is very difficult to deal with. Depression borders around medical, it needs more of psychiatric treatment. Biggest headache, how to identify? I mean, that's the biggest problem. It's like other diseases, we can take some blood test or some, I mean, there's some diagnostic test available. For these two, you can only talk to people. There's really no, I mean, temperature or pulse. I mean, very little is going to be disclosed by these tests. So what I'll do is I'll just quickly run through what I just put together. Now I'm trying to distinguish between the stress and the depression. Stress is when, I mean, some kind of a reaction when you feel you're taken on more than you can handle. Let's say I didn't study, so my exams are next week and I'm trying to study five subjects at the same time. You get stressed out, or too many guests. There's a work at home situation, guests have suddenly arrived. You got a lot of problems because first you don't know if they're bringing infection to the home. Second, you're not sure. I mean, you got to cook. I mean, a lot of things have to be done. All these day-to-day stuff at work, school, and relationship also. I just expand on that. So these have become the serious conditions which are leading to stress. Can we handle them? Yes, we can. I mean, stress can be handled. Now, depression becomes a little more difficult because, see, as you study more and more, actually, there are two psychologies. If you have time, you could read criminal psychology and industrial psychology. If you read, I mean, just for the fun of it, I mean, nothing serious. You could just read criminal psychology and industrial psychology. What you find is they all are here in the stress part of it, but they handle the stress very effectively. Even under the most threatening circumstances, they do not disclose anything, particularly hardened criminals. They don't disclose anything, not even their face. That's why they say poker face. Like when you're playing a card game, you don't want to show what cards you have with you, so you don't have a happy expression or a sad expression. So that's why this English expression of you're having a poker face. Depression is unfortunately a medical situation, but with no proper way to test and find out. So we say it's a mood disorder right now. I mean, they do have, I mean, we used to call it electric shock, but now they got fancy names for it. They give medicines, antidepressants, and so on. But overall, it needs a lot of talking, medicines. It's a combined treatment. Can a person with stress move to depression? The answer is yes, if the stress is not handled properly. Prolonged stress leads to depression. So this is one of the, at least the COVID has brought this out very clearly. I mean, it's always been there. People didn't pay attention. Now with this COVID problem, more and more people are studying it. Not just the doctors. We have the paramedicals. We have the HR people, human resource. That is a people who employ and take care of the department. Then we have managers, line managers, and also today we're having board of directors also very concerned with this issue. So when you are unhappy for a long term, it's a deep rooted unhappiness. It can be anything. It's like there are some people who are crazy about their jobs. There are some people who want to, do something outside the home. That's why if you study the story of the Starbucks, the owner, his concept was you need a third space. There is a home space, there is a workspace, but you don't want both. So you go and sit in this coffee shop. If you generally notice Starbucks, except in malls where it's crowded, world over, including India, they have a lot sprawling sofa sets and all that. You just go sit, do your own work, or maybe you just do nothing. You're just sitting there sipping coffee. They call it the third space to get rid of the problems both at work and at home. India, we never actually we didn't have all these issues till this. I mean, India became a richer country and brought some problems along with it. Now, the symptoms are something which we have to identify, particularly in young people. Actually, I don't think there's an age group, but any other doctors say. Actually, I've taken most of the study from WHO and NIMHANS, that is our National Institute of Mental Health. But anyway, the point is that in industry, we're having maybe Coimbatore also is an industrial city, so you have a lot of problems. They could be facing problems. These symptoms and warning signs, other people go through the signs in detail, but basically you're not able to sleep, there's no appetite, there's no concentration. Generally this happens when you've done something wrong or when you feel guilty. But here, COVID is not something which you have done wrong or you are guilty of. But you know what has happened in some cases, a person goes to work, comes home, then either a child or an old person gets COVID. Now, we don't know if this person brought it, but generally what will happen is everybody in the house will blame, saying that because of you only all this happened. I mean, you brought the infection home. That psychologically troubles them and then it ends up in depression. But we don't know because that old person or child might have got it from somewhere else also, not necessarily only from the person who went to work or went to the shop. Uh, because India is like we don't take too many root cause analysis. We just blame the first possible reason. Now, warning signs for depression are various things. Basically, what it means is anything which is away from the normal, where you probably did not have something and now you are getting it, you got to watch out. So this is something which we all avoid. Basically, we say we'll get over it. It's only a short period. It's only a passing phase. That's how we have been labeling these things. But I think now we should spend a little more time. And when you see that changes, and actually even for suicide cases, they tell you watch out for any change from the normal. It's not that you're scolding them or beating them. It's not that. It's change from the normal. So, but the problem is because of these smaller families and no social structure, parents go to work, so they may not even know the children's pattern. And old people live in isolation. They live in their own flats or homes somewhere. Children don't visit them, so nobody knows the normal pattern. So how do we identify the abnormal? Well, that's one major issue. Now we have classified, at least the Indian government has classified the vulnerable cases. Actually, we have examples for all of these. I'm taking them from Chennai, but Bombay also it's the same problem. Children very vulnerable to psychological stress. They are tied up inside the house. They have their own problems. Old people, senior citizens, as we call them, they are again isolated or could be having problems because nobody is listening to them. Then pregnant women, of course, that's basically a psychological disorder. Persons with disability, here the problem is more with loss of jobs, failure of people to respect them in case they are not economically sound. I mean, different, each of them has got a different reason. Now they have said that there are some, actually there are, sorry, there are three, but there are five streams for case detection. One is case identification by the people who are actually in touch with the public, like everybody, police, etc., whole bunch. So they are the first set who has to identify. But question is, are they well trained? Do they understand uh, what is COVID? See, for instance, to give an example, if you've been watching the TV in the early days, in February, March, they would lock people up at the airport. They would treat them like, like as if they're smugglers or criminals. They didn't have any social distancing. All these passengers were one lot and they just locked them up, said you can't enter the city till 14 days are over or something. People start fighting. I mean, there are so many issues. They're in a hurry to go somewhere. These frontline people never understood the seriousness. In fact, in Chennai and Bombay, many doctors died because they themselves didn't know the seriousness. They also paid the price for it. So this is the first lot we expect them to understand, identify. The second is healthcare professionals. These are the non-psychiatric. These are basically, if you've seen the Madras Corporation's website, you can register as a professional for they pay 15,000 rupees a month. You have to house taking temperature and I think there's one oxygen test and a temperature. If you bring a patient for testing, is given a commission of 500 rupees. I mean, I don't know, but this is done by the Greater Chennai Corporation. So you can check their website. What I'm telling is on their website. So a lot of these unemployed students and people got into this business. They'll come house to house, flat to flat. Some people chase them away. Some people get angry. These are not trained. I mean, they give them maybe 2 days orientation, give them one handheld temperature scanner and one oxygen unit, give them a mask and say go. Now, I mean, again, how much do you expect from these people? Then how much do we expect patients to walk in? Now, see, this is a big problem now. How many of us will walk in? I mean, we'll go to a heart specialist or dentist or whatever. But how many of us will walk into a mental health professional and tell him, "Look, I'm depressed. I'm having this worry. I'm worried. I may get this disease. My friend has got it. Something like that." Again, a difficult job. Then again, frontline medical, non-medical in need of support. Now, these are the doctors themselves. When they see people, I mean, dying every day, they have a lot of problems in the hospitals. I did visit the hospitals 2 times. They're so scared. Obviously we are all scared, but they are so scared because government hospitals they're not getting the right equipment. I mean, not just the masks, even the PPEs, the sanitizers. So some of them are carrying their own stuff. Doctors can afford it. What about ward boys and the lower level staff? It is also a major crisis here. Then screening of the high risk population. Anyway, Tamil Nadu has done a very good job compared to some states and even some countries abroad. We have done this, but again, homeless people, how do you identify them? Today is in location A, tomorrow is in location B. We have these marginalized communities where they even beat up the medical workers who come to check them. Then life-threatening diseases. Many of these, I know some of them have fallen victim to this COVID and severe mental illness. Um, Generally, it's a very difficult situation. Now, I've just taken a few pictures of the internet. Now, one is there's an online class. Students are now bothered about online class. The teacher's asking, have you understood everything? Do you need any clarification? Do you have doubts? Nobody speaks. End of which, end of the class, this particular student is calling out to the mother. I didn't understand the assignment. Now, these are typical scenarios. So parents think the children are studying, children have no idea what is going on. Now, UGC says you can reopen colleges staggered, schools they need to come out with proper SOPs. But once they open, how much did they learn online? We don't know. What did they absorb? Absolutely no idea. How are you going to examine them? Teachers themselves are illiterate in the sense that they would fall into this, I mean, I won't say healthcare, but non-psychiatric teachers, I mean, have to fall into that crowd. Where are they competent enough to identify? Simply failing a student is not a solution. Beating a student is not a solution. We have to find out why they didn't understand what happened, and there's so many issues we need to look at. Now, for the people at home, they cleaned, let's say, a housewife, homemaker, whatever, cleaned up the house. Everybody's at home. In an hour's time, everything is messed up. Um, Actually, I know the very senior people, you're all here. Generally, when you go to work, you're safe. But in one very senior person, he was sitting at home. Then he started complaining, my wife is wasting food. She's throwing things away. Food is rotting in the refrigerator. He never noticed it in the last 25 or 30 years. Now, all of a sudden, he's sitting at home. He's opening the fridge. He's going to the kitchen. Both are stressed out now. The husband is stressed out. Wife is wasting money. Wife is stressed out. Husband is unnecessarily interfering. There are issues like this. Now we take the risk index. Now the risk index, what you find is, okay, there are places where, when like walking, this is mostly when you do something by yourself, including ordering food from outside, you're at a very low risk. Then medium is when you're moving with a small crowd, like playing some games or going to shopping, whatever. This is very low, medium. Low. Medium is when the crowd is slowly started increasing, or you're you have to touch something like a dentist or a hospital or a taxi or something. The other, when we move to medium high, this is when we are with a slightly more number of people and equipment, which I see the doctor will sterilize the equipment, barbers and so on, even shops, they don't sterilize the chairs and or cutlery and so on. The high risk is the usual parties, socializing, etc. So these diagrams were generated long back, although I've taken it off the internet now. We had, I used to see in the papers, we had a Supreme Court, a retired, of course, retired person, Supreme Court judge whose wife attended the son's wedding. Now, the son's wedding was held somewhere outside Chennai. This lady, because they are influential, this Supreme Court retired judge, they got the pass from the government. I mean, she went to the wedding. I mean, there's a restriction on guests, but obviously they're influential, so all the rules were broken. She got COVID, she died. I mean, 3 days she died. She couldn't even come back. So there itself, she passed away. The husband got so depressed within 3 days, he also passed away. Now, are they illiterate? No. Don't they know the rules? I mean, the Supreme Court judge has to know the rules. Did they did they use their influence for misuse their influence? Yes. I mean, how do we solve such issues? And then it's a big stress for the whole family. Both the grandfather and grandmother, or mother and father, both pass away within a period of 3 days, and they're isolated, different locations. Now the treatments are uh, one of one of the treatments is you got to recognize your own self triggers. Basically, we're saying refrain from unhealthy habits, drinking, smoking, etc. Try to do more of relaxation techniques. You can have a small self-help group, but actually yoga helps here. So that's one thing I would like to stress on. And counseling, psychotherapy, and talking therapy, etc. These are all basically in stress-related situations, not depression. So the moment you feel you're unhappy, you're getting angry, you're not accepting something, try to help yourself. I mean, that's what the um, Indian Medical Council and the Indian hospitals, I mean, the groups, they formed a group to do all this. They suggest. And in companies also, they're suggesting something like you do online games, something like that. Then we have this cognitive behavioral thing which deals with how you perceive a difficult situation. Actually, to be honest here, those who think a lot, I mean, those who analyze things very deeply, they get stressed more easily. Someone who cannot analyze things or is not interested in analyzing things, stress is much less. So it's like, if I'm going to the station, I'll miss the train, then I have to go to the bus stand. I keep thinking so many things. The other chap is not bothered. He goes, if he misses the train, only then he'll start thinking about the next solution. Otherwise, he'll get the train. I mean, maybe he was thinking, uh, he was not even thinking about things which will never happen. This is one thing, but as I told you, as India has become more advanced, uh, we are now studying more, thinking more. We have more information. We have internet. We have books. We have everything affordable. Problems are started increasing, and that's what we call negative thought patterns. I mean, you always worry about the risks which may or may not materialize. Now, once you get into sustained stress, then you'll have to go into this medicines part. So you'll have to find out why it happened, whether counseling alone will do, or you need to take medicines. I mean, medicines can be addictive, which is another problem. Some people cannot sleep without a sleeping tablet. All these issues we have to look at. And some of the medical treatment, generally they're addictive. I mean, I can tell you that straight away, they're addictive. So even though the doctor says you can come out of it, it may be difficult. Now, this lockdown concept, actually, if you've seen now in the second lockdown in Europe, most of the people are going out of the house, defying the lockdown, going to the beach and so on. Obviously, they'll get the disease. Second wave will be worse than the first. But then, why are they doing it? Because they're giving vent to their stress problems. Of course, unemployment is very high there. They're giving vent to their stress problems as a rebellion against government orders. I mean, there are many ways we can rebel. I mean, it's a whole lot of things we can do. But I guess in India it's not so bad. We still obey law quite a bit. Now, when we say don't move around, one of the things is we have to stay in a place, but we also need to look for alternatives so we don't get stressed. I think this is very easy way to understand this is when they put animals in cages. I mean, animals which are birds which fly around and run around. You put them in cages, whatever stress they go through, some of them will die also. Not because of a disease, it's just that there's no freedom. Same thing happens to a person who is in lockdown. You can think of a person like being placed in a jail. Some of our older people, they go to US to see their grandchildren. Their children go to work. Kids are very small, or maybe they go to school. They have to be in the house the whole week. Till the weekend, the children take them out in a car somewhere. They can't drive. I mean, the old people can't drive. They can't do anything. They're scared to go out because they may be mugged or whatever. So, given that environment, what we find is it's the same thing. So it's like a lockdown. They get so angry, they come back to India and then they won't go. They say, I don't want to go to US. It doesn't make sense. A lockdown is similar to that. It's absolutely similar to that. This is very important, and we have to understand lockdowns are not just what we are seeing now. It can be any place where you're not able to move freely. Then there's something called isolation, social isolation. Now, India is a country where we keep meeting people, talking. It's a crowded country. So even if you don't talk, if you see people on the road, when you come to cross the road, there'll be two more people crossing. You go to a shop, at least one more guy there. So everything is, you see people all the time. Suddenly, you're not able to see them anymore. You go to a hotel, it's empty. Go wherever you go, it's like nobody's there. Now there are problems. So when you're socially isolated, we say keep busy. Distract yourself from negative emotions. Now, the first problem is we have to identify the negative emotion. Now, when people were laid off from work, youngsters, yeah, in a way, they managed. Old people, I'm talking about, they call them CXOs, CEOs, CFOs, etc. To go to office, maybe there's a I mean, everything. You got a secretary, you got office boys, you got drivers, you got fellows bringing coffee, you ring a bell and I call for meetings. I mean, there's so many things you do. Now, when you're sitting at home, nothing is going to work. I mean, there are no office boys, nothing is there. So you got to get it yourself. It is leading to a lot of problems because the senior people, also spousal related issues, um, they are not able to identify it's a negativity. So we try to tell them, try something else. Say what happens is this: you're on a, let's say, a Zoom call like this. It's an office call. I mean, not one of these rotary calls. Office call. Then suddenly somebody walks in. You got to tell them, don't come. I'm on a busy program. They pass a sarcastic remark. All your juniors hear it. You're a terror in the office, but then they find out you're not a terror at home. Various things keep happening. So that's why they say go do something where you're not bothering others. And eat well, fine, that we understand. Physical activity, we understand. Then try to understand if others are having some problems, maybe a neighbor or somebody there. So what you're trying to do is basically you're trying to that empathize with someone, so you have a feel good factor. Then the other part is the older people get completely confused, mentally lost. Now, why do they do that? Because elderly people have a fixed routine. Now, when they are locked up, the routine fails. Like I know many old people go for a walk in the morning or evening. The doctor says they're not walking, they're only talking. But that's fine. I mean, if they're talking also, it's fine. Now, they're not allowed to go out. I mean, they can't do anything. What do they do? I mean, they're not good on the telephone, so end the problems. Children have to be kept busy. I will look at the children, they've got other problems. Now, I know this diagram is not big enough, but anyway, I'll mail this. I mail the thing. So if you look at most of the issues we have here, all of them relate to various levels of tolerance or intolerance. So there are various things. I mean, we need to understand. If you just go through it, it will be easy for you. One is we look at loss of income, etc., vulnerability, food production and distribution is disrupted. I know a lot of young children who got, I mean, they're spoiled basically, single child, children, they're spoiled. I mean, basically they ask for, let's say, a specific brand of noodles. It's not available. Immediately there's a tantrum. I won't eat. Then the stress is passed around to the entire family. And then we also have things like this devastating effect on health outcomes, then school, etc. So if you go through all of these, we find it has affected us in different ways. Right now, we are not able to quantify it in terms of rupees, but production losses we are able to quantify. You know, there's a GST deficit. They're issuing unwanted notices for nothing. We know that from the government's point of view, but then from the industry point of view, um, people say every parent thinks the child is an investment. So they spend a lot of money on colleges, schools, etc. But just think of it, you're paying a fairly hefty fee for the school. There's no school. Guy sits at home, uses like a laptop or something or a tablet, you pay for the internet. School still collects the fee. So there's a big issue here. So everybody's getting stressed out. So this is one of the issues. Now we also know that you should not listen to rumors. Generally we don't. Generally we don't listen. But what has happened is because of the social media and gossip and so many things, we get to know a lot of data which is not true. If you see today's social media, they got cure for cancer, they got cure for everything in the world, including COVID. But we know they're all false. So that is why we say don't follow these news, etc. Stick to known advice and all those things. But the part we have to understand is when this false data comes, I mean, false information comes from known sources, friends send them, office colleagues send them, and so on. Maybe there's more, what should I say, they're more credulous about the information. Half-heartedly they believe, then slowly it becomes more and more. In fact, to be honest with you, the early days of the infection, you read all this stuff, there are about 6 or 8 signs. My foot would itch, or maybe I'd have a back pain. I mean, whatever, sore throat and so many things. Every time I thought I had to go check for corona, but I really didn't go. But fear was there initially. Yes, every symptom I thought it was corona. So now you're getting a little more. I mean, if the symptom persists, you would like to see it, but otherwise just ignore it. Then there are the emotional problems. So wherever you get into an anxiety, the anxiety is not always being anxious about something. Let us say, I told this person who suddenly felt the spouse was wasting food. He's been earning for so many years. Same thing is happening in his house. He never bothered. But today he sits at home. He sees something, maybe buy a whole bread and eat half of it, and half of it is wasted. Is basically, we call it stress, but now we'll change the name, call it anxiety. What we're trying to say is ignore it or try to live with it. Think of something else. Don't concentrate on that loaf of bread. Don't concentrate on the tumbler they broke or whatever they did. Just don't worry about it. And then again, when you're angry and irritated, you will get angry because when you're sitting at home, you see things you never saw before. And these are, I'm not exaggerating, but there are people who are so fed up with this thing. They say the problems in the office are less than the problems I have at home. So, I mean, the CAEs, the whatever you call them, CEOs, CFOs, the top people, they get really fed up. So, see, office problems are not your problems, they're somebody else's. Home problems are your problems. So, the way you look at them will change completely. So, that is why we say do something and keep yourself happy. Is it easy? Not so easy. It's going to be tough. Then you have to avoid all types of medicines and drugs and alcohol and all those things. And we also need to have a positive attitude towards people who are infected with COVID. Because I still remember in school when I had chickenpox and I went back to school, you have to sit all by yourself separately. Even though you got better, you spent your 3 weeks sitting at home, and when you go back, they isolated you. Then you kind of remember it for the rest of your life. Rest of what I did in my fifth standard, sixth standard, I forgot, but this I clearly remember. So don't, because COVID is curable. I mean, if you're cured, you're cured. I mean, that's it. Now, if you happen to get infected, don't panic. See, our death rate is very low because whatever deaths we are having, most of them are either ignorance or going too late. That's the only reason. It's not that old people will die, young people will die, nothing like that. It is just that we didn't go early enough. That's it. And there is this major emotional issue because what happened is some of these doctors and news items tell you after you recover, you will get a blood clot, you'll go into paralysis, you need physiotherapy, etc. Don't worry about it. You can get a stroke even without COVID. So blood clots form all the time. Any old person will have cholesterol problem. So you don't have to get too worried. It is a definite by what shall we say, a definite symptom. I mean, a definite byproduct of whatever disease we get. But that doesn't mean everybody is going to be paralyzed and so on. And then also, um, don't when people keep you at a distance, it also gets very stressful. Put on your mask. Don't come near me. You're not near him. You're 6 feet away. Nothing is going to happen. And then the other point is when you fall sick, and today in the city hospitals, they fleece a lot of money. They take away a lot of money from you. So then you feel, in fact, in one case, they took the entire retirement savings and spent it off. I mean, whatever, PF and gratuity. That has depressed the person, that old person, very much because he felt that money should have been for the children or something else. But unfortunately, it was spent on himself, which was not. I mean, he didn't have a good feeling about it. That again is a anxiety, stress, whatever we call it. If you don't put that person, get him right, it'll end up in depression, which needs medical help. And of course, we ask people when they get cured to tell their stories, whether it's whatever the disease may be, leprosy or HIV or whatever. We tell them to tell their story. Now, the problem with this COVID is You just have a photograph in the newspaper, but nobody is sharing their stories. So we need to um, get those stories out. Then the other thing is these are the, I told you, the detail which you notice, sleep patterns, there's no concentration, the health is getting worse, they're not eating, etc. Excessive use of tobacco and drugs, etc. These you'll have to identify immediately. English word, doctors use it. These are basically stress problems. So we can handle it without medicine. The other part is the difficult part where they had some mental illness, not total mental illness. This is maybe a depression. Maybe there's an accident. Some people get involved in an accident on a highway. They get into big trauma after that. It's actually trauma. I wouldn't say mental illness. Or they have seen something which they shouldn't have seen, like maybe usually it'll be accidents or murders or something. They get into trauma, so they get them out of the trauma with a lot of what do you call counseling. But after the trauma, again, when they get into this COVID business, they'll get worse. So we have to make sure they stay positive to keep them engaged. It's a very difficult job because, uh, particularly seeing children who have trauma, it's a very difficult job because their mind keeps. Because in fact, even I've seen animals. We have a dog which is flood rescued. We have a cancer dog which is abandoned. The trauma, getting over the trauma is very difficult. And since animals are easier to study, humans sometimes conceal their unhappiness. That is why I go to the previous slide. Notice any change in a pattern. Particularly concentration is the best symptom. If they are not concentrating, ask them what they are thinking. I mean, something else is going on in their mind. Then we have emotional needs for children. Okay, children, basically, I just made a few, cut and paste a few pictures of all this. So I can, in fact, I put all their lines. These are all Indian helplines, 1098, and the Nimhans line is also an Indian line. Okay, now let's look at the children who are, I mean, basically the poorer children, migrant children who are separated from the parents, children in shelters. Okay, these orphans, etc. Uh, they will have a serious insecurity and so on problems, which leads to a lot of depression. But see, we also need to, in children, it's a little different. See, here I said it's more on the they lose concentration, sleeping, etc. With children, it's more like if they want to talk about something, they are more open. So just let them talk. Um, I mean, kind of convince them or encourage them to share these concerns, convince them it's not serious, explain to them whatever. Then, if they have a problem, you'll need to sit with them and comfort them. Keep praising them at home, whatever. I'll come to this because today, one of my classes I had to cancel because the teachers are so useless. They didn't take classes properly. Now that the exams are scheduled, they started taking class continuously. And in the poorer homes, they buy their internet connection daily, pay some daily subscription or something they pay. And most of their internet got over, so they could not attend the job-oriented course. So we feel sad for them and said, "You don't bother. We'll reschedule your classes. Nothing lost." So, and the parents are upset because the children have to go to work. They have need value-added courses. College teachers are totally lost. They waste their time normal days and then try to teach full day other times. The teacher keeps changing. They take different subjects at college. The student is the same 8 hours, 9 hours if they are going to listen to somebody talking something on a laptop or a phone. What will that student learn? Very little. Then you also have to reassure them. That's what I did. Of course, not for the COVID, but we said, you don't worry. I will take care of you. Your classes anyway will be employed only next year. See, these are all the issues that people ignore, teachers ignore. Very sad, but that's what is happening. Then we have a lot of wrong stuff that virus attacks only old people. I didn't put that point here, but in the early days, the servant came and told my wife, COVID attacks only rich people, so be very careful. Then we had to tell her only the rich people go to hospital. If the poor people are not understanding this COVID and going to hospital. Of course, now their understanding has improved. So these are things, and for instance, all these are false. Mouthwash, if you see the TV, you will find everybody is selling right from Dettol to Listerine to everybody. They've got even one fellow selling mouth spray also. He said it'll kill all the COVID in your mouth. It need not be there. It may be in your eyes. It could be in your nose. I mean, nobody knows where it is. So these are all the wrong stuff. The steam bath and everybody, China, they drink hot water. I drink hot water because it's a sore throat, but I'm as susceptible to COVID as anybody else. So these are all false statements. Now the situations here is what we call uh, parental problems, domestic violence, child abuse. These are the issues. So children are not allowed to come out with their problems. They are scolded because they are not studying or they're ridiculed. Maybe children do something wrong at home, they drop something, break something, and they're immediately beaten for it. Now I'm looking at most of the homes where maybe the affluent homes, the parents are okay, but if there's a different problem. The children have their own separate rooms where the parents don't know that their children are stressed or depressed until it's too late. But these are more like the crowded rooms both in Chennai and Bombay. They have these problems. A child gets into a trauma. I mean, that's what I'm saying. The other part is where there's a domestic violence and the child is watching. They also get into a lot of stress. Now, why did domestic violence increase? Where they said COVID is a lockdown, man loses the job, only the woman has to work, so she has to go out work. Domestic servants still had their jobs, but they've also lost quite a lot of their jobs now. So then there's no money in the house, there's frustration, all kinds of things happen. And the other one is when little better homes where they have separate rooms or they can browse on their own, there are these internet problems. So if you're not comfortable, first of all, they not should not be chatting. But any if they are, and somebody is crossing the boundary for normal speech to abnormal speech, they have to stop it. Don't take any friends on your social media who are unknown to you. If you have any suspicious looking mail or an attachment, delete it. Don't share your passwords. And after you finish with the computer, you quit. I mean, exit. So this is two types. One is the poorer homes. One is the richer homes. Both have problems now. Children. I'm talking about children. Are they infected with COVID? No. But do they have all these issues? Yes. So these are the stress problems they are going through. It also extends to parents. Okay. Then from the community point of view, we need to form some crisis centers, but I mean, how well we could do it is a big question. And they should be integrated so that everybody's got access to it. Long back, even Rotary, Lions, all these different clubs and even Salvation Army or some government, even the corporation, whatever, police, they would conduct camps, cataract camps, some camp like that. Okay, they'll have uh, low cost or free kind of treatment. But today we don't find any COVID camps from most of these organizations. Maybe it's the fear of getting infected is still there. But if we have these camps and we encourage, particularly senior citizens, unemployed people, particularly youth, give them something, some way to figure this out, it'll be very, very helpful. And so, but anyway, right now, it's not happened as yet. I've taken one or two case studies, all from NIMHANS. There's a bank clerk who has not been infected. I mean, he's okay. He was a little afraid of this COVID initially. Then the bank has given them gloves and various stuff. He's pretty happy. Only time, once in a way, he thinks he may bring the infection home and infect an older person in the home, his mother, whatever. But then he doesn't think about it. So he has no impairment. See, the thing is, he's going to work, he's happy, he's coming back, he's normal. He does have this concern, but it's not letting him upset his life. He's probably maintaining the social distance and washing his hands, etc., etc. Now, in the next case, just an example, he's supposed to be a colleague of the previous case person. Now, he has got very anxious, and even though he's got the same masks and gloves which the bank gives, he's very unhappy. He feels panicky, and at home he gets angry. Sleep is disturbed. He sometimes, even loss of taste is supposed to be a COVID symptom. So he gets all kinds of. Actually, they used to call them third-year disease in medical college. But by the time we reach the third year, because they studied some medicine, pharmacology, clinical anatomy, they'll think they have all the possible diseases in the world. So he feels that way. Now his problem is of concern, and he goes to work mainly because his wife chases him out. Now this is a serious problem. So this is more like he's got into a first level stress. Now if you don't attend to this, it can get worse. Now right now you don't need any anti-anxiety drugs except maybe some relaxants they give you. So maybe Restel or something, but nothing more than that. So this is the second level case, and this is a something which needs attention. The third level is there's a housemaid, husband does the job, she's the only one cooking, etc. Now she has become very sad because of debts. They have some debts, and okay, they have debts which they can't pay off, and she is developing suicidal tendencies. But then she says, "My young children are there," and so on. But there are people who commit suicide even with young children. Now, this is a greater desperation. This was more anxiety. This is not anxiety, it is a real situation. No, only single income, debts to be paid, children to be fed. There are a lot of problems. So what she's doing is she's making mistakes. She cannot remember, okay, etc., etc. Now this is a serious problem. This is depression. So regarding depression, you need to have some uh, very serious counseling and some medical help also. This is a real situation. This is an imaginary situation. This person is coping in the situation. There's no situation. No situation here managing. No situation here getting stressed. Genuine situation seriously getting into depression. Then okay, then somebody after losing his job is drinking. He comes home, beats the children, etc., etc. And this has not been happening before. Now, what has happened is this is basically a social stigma. See, I lose my job. Suddenly, I feel nobody's respecting me in the house. There may not be anything like that, but I feel that way. Neighbors may talk like, "Isn't your husband going to work or something?" There are issues like that. So then again, he falls into this abuse, drug abuse, or tobacco or alcohol. This needs counseling and de-addiction. Then we have some words. One is quarantine, where we are infected or I'm infected and I'm asked to stay separate, that's quarantine. Isolation is we are not allowed to mix with others because we don't want to pick up the disease. Isolation is different, quarantine is different. Of course, social distancing we understand. And right now, India is far better. The rest of the world is struggling. Of course, India means, I mean, even countries like Malaysia, Singapore, they are managing. China now, but these Western fellows are like not obeying anything, neither no quarantine, no isolation, no social distance. Now there is a extreme problem here. This is an old lady has got some simple coughing, fever, etc., whatever, and the doctor has checked her out. It is nothing. She doesn't have to be worried, but she wants this COVID test to be done so she's not sick. She's very. I mean, she's old, so 60 plus something. So she's worried she'll get it, and doctor is explaining doesn't want to believe him. Now, this is called a worried well. You're quite well, but you're unnecessarily worried. Now, this is like self-imposed punishment. Now, this is one of the most difficult situations we have. Um, Maybe I would safely put myself also into this situation because there are many times, as I told you, every time I get some small symptom, I think it's COVID. Then maybe a day or two it's gone, then you're happy, but something else will come. So that's the problem. Now, self-care, I mean, this is what kind of summarizing of what I told you. We need to take care of ourselves. And you fix a routine at home, outside, try to avoid crowds. Then be grateful for what we have, talk to friends, etc. Be overwhelmed, eat well, don't worry about your food. make time to disconnect. Now, this is an important part where isolation, it's like those days people would go off to Himalayas or Benares. They go on a pilgrimage. They won't talk to people. There used to be a type of fasting which where you don't talk to people the whole day. I know this because some of the students I used to teach in another place. One day I suddenly found they were not talking. I thought these guys are rebelling against the teacher or something. Then somebody explained it to me that some Mauna Viradam or something. They won't eat and they won't talk. It's kind of it's a thing. Maybe we need to do that. Disconnect with people around us, pick up a hobby, etc. Stay connected. These are self-care. No doctor required. Nothing required. No medicine. Now, if you see the badly affected areas, now for instance, gems, leather, etc., very badly affected. Minus 98 means no exports. Nobody is buying gems from us. Leather dropped. You look at essentials, rice, etc., fruit, we are still exporting them, no problem. So if you see loss of jobs differ from sector to sector. In agricultural areas, maybe they are not so stressed out. In industrial production areas like electronics, leather, they are super stressed out. And now we know Diwali firecrackers, some states said they will not allow. It's an year-long industry. Kills people badly. I mean, kills their economy badly. They will get very depressed, very stressed. I mean, you just have no idea what to do next. So these are some of the things we have to consider. So maybe our sympathy or empathy or the way we help people will also depend on where we are, industrial places, non-industrialized places, and so on. Okay, now what I've done is I just took this, only the index from this thing. It is an enhanced publication. It's there on the internet, so you could go through it. Now they have made a full book and they've given you all the possible how to face each of these. Each of these is a chapter. I removed the index. I just put the points here. Now they have very clearly defined what to do. I mean, in each of these cases, healthcare, community, home quarantine, hospital quarantine, children, adolescents, etc., etc. So we have various things. So we have got these various things like social, psychological, domestic violence. You'll be surprised. Domestic violence is prevalent worldwide. I mean, it's okay. Maybe there are some countries which don't have it, but it seems to be a problem. And this pandemic has accelerated this violence. Particularly, I have no explanation for this, but see what is happening is even in a club they're saying members can come, guests not allowed. The reason why the member goes there is he takes a guest or he talks to them. Maybe members to members, there'll be a lot of politics also. So even that is not helping. So he's not even going to the club. He sits at home, gets into trouble. So these are all these issues here. Okay, then another thing is aggression because you know what I mean. When you deal with the top, what do we call the officers? We call them um, chief executives. One of the biggest problems they say is, sir, when I come to work, I mean, they're not allowed to come to work. I'm sorry. When they work from home and they're handling the work situations, somebody in the house keeps disturbing them. You can't tell them I'm busy because obviously you're right under their nose, under their vision, and they're having a lot of problems. What I would like you to probably look at seriously is now this yoga is not that body twisting yoga, not that. This is more of breathing, vibration, kind of relaxing it out, just ignoring the world. I mean that's it. So that's it. And then digital platforms, electronically, a lot of support is being extended. In India, they have extended a lot of support. Unfortunate part is many people are not aware of it. That's the problem. So if you, unless you're involved in a serious psychological exercise, HR or some mental health organization or a hospital, we don't even know these things exist. The paper is only full of Trump or some yatra or some fellow something happened. They don't publicize genuine support to these patients. They don't. And unfortunately, that's how it is. I just tried to paste a few of these numbers here. So okay, some of them are Mumbai, but that's okay. We got a whole lot of people, organizations. Some of them are, I would say, average, because sometimes you call a toll-free number, they're not able to understand. So they give them to call centers where the young people work. They're not very knowledgeable, but some people, yes, they work. It takes a bit of persistence to get all this happening. So I think we have an hour now. Rather, we spent an hour. A little, I just went over my time limit, but that's okay. What I would like is, we can look at a lot of these issues. Many of them we don't talk about. I mean, to be honest with you, there are so many things we don't talk about. So, for instance, we don't talk about, say, for instance, domestic violence, whereas in other countries all over the world, it is treated as a disease. So I'll just take some picture and okay. So if we looked at some pictures, I will just share this screen. So if we look at this screen out here, the dark green is where we have the most, I mean, there's absolutely no physical security, and the light green, I mean, okay, the light green is where you get the best security. If you notice, this entire Gulf and Asian belt, including India, some parts of Africa, etc., we have a lot of these issues. See, the difficulty is, what happens, since anyway, we are all in the COVID stress education right now. What happens is, when the woman has the job, but the man has lost it, there is a tremendous ego issue, which ends up in a lot of problems. So the wife goes to work and then also comes back and ends up in a situation where you are going to have a, I mean, the husband is upset. I mean, he's angry and he doesn't accept it. There are issues like that. So we have issues based on that. The other side is children. When children, let's say like a teenager, he works for Swiggy or something, and then the parents' ego, because the parent lost the job anyway. So the parents' egos get very high, and for no reason they get aggressive towards their teenage, or maybe little beyond teenage, maybe 20s, 20, less than 25. They get very aggressive towards them, and then the youngster is fed up with them. I mean, there are so many issues we are facing. Maybe just like we have these different camps, maybe we need to look at. See, when we say digital counseling, how many people would really be on the digital platform? We don't know. I mean, how many can afford it? How many can really be there? We don't know as yet. But when we physically meet them, maybe you could talk. It takes some time, but maybe talk to them, because actually one of the biggest issues we are having is healthcare providers in hospitals. They need a lot of support, which they are not getting because their families are isolating them. Particularly, I'm talking about not the big doctors, but the average doctors and the nurses and ward boys. They are isolated, so they face a lot of stress, and maybe they'll end up in depression. I don't know. So anyway, that's one group. The other group, as I told you about, how teachers have not been trained or not even sensitized to this, understanding the children's problems. So they simply say go online class. Of course, they are also in a difficult situation, but the children are in a worse situation. Um, and affluent homes where the children have their own rooms and they get into unwanted problems with the internet. There's no monitoring of the internet or the TV or whatever. The only thing you get is complaints. You don't get anybody seriously trying to solve the problem. Maybe industrial HR and this software HR, because for them it's business, it's money. So they are trying to see that their staff are being identified, understood, and worked. So I think I mean that's my opinion on this stress and how it is affecting all of us. But if you go back to one of our earlier slides, I said self-help during pandemic. If we all did this, I think most of the stress would not be there. We have to learn to ignore what we did not know existed. Because sometimes we say what we know and what we don't know. But there was what we don't know that we don't know. Typical examples are my colleagues and friends, they're all old like me. Their houses, they see things breaking, food being wasted, um, suddenly making long distance phone calls makes them all very angry. So I tell them, you didn't know all this. Anyway, it was there. All these years it was there. So just leave it. I mean, why even bother about it? So there's nothing we can do about it. I mean, you can do something. It'll be, I mean, why 20, 30 years or even 40 years we never bother about it. So just leave it. Okay, because only now we see how vessels are washed in the house, maybe not the cleanest or something like that. You don't bother, just leave it. You didn't die all these years out of a badly washed vessel. You won't die now. So just leave it off. That's it. So anyway, thank you very much for this opportunity.